Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bonnie Hagan, co-chair of the Westchester Jewish Council Greening Committee, and I'm here today with my co-chair, Evan Kingsley, and Westchester Jewish Council's Assistant Executive Director, Pam Goldstein, our committee members, Bob Schloss and Michael Scheffler, and our speaker, Nicole Laible, who is the Principal Environmental Planner for Westchester County and District Manager for the Soil and Water Conservation District, and of course, all of you. So I always begin with a little bit of housekeeping, and I've been saying this at the last few meetings, and I just want to continue to emphasize that while we are deeply affected by the crisis in Israel, and now also right here in the United States, where students have taken over university buildings and raised Palestinian flags, where the phrase "No Zionists Allowed" rings across towns and campuses, and the hostages are still languishing in Gaza, it feels more important than ever for us to come together, both for comfort and to find ways to move forward by doing good in every place that we can. And doing good for the environment is something that we can and should continue to do. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here today and continuing to take steps to do good and help the environment. First, we'll go around and do our brief introductions. I think it'll be rather quick today. Then Pam will give us any WJC news or updates she has. And then Evan will introduce our guest speaker. After Nicole makes her presentation, we'll have time for some Q&A. And time permitting, Evan and I have some questions we'd like to ask the group. So now let's go around the room and introduce yourselves. Just say your name and the organization that you are representing. And once you finish, please pick the person next to you on your screen, announce their name, and then they will be the next person to introduce themselves. We'll do this until everyone's introduced, and then we'll move to Pam for the WJC update. Okay, I'm Bonnie Hagan, and I am representing WJC Greening Committee. And I call upon Evan.
And I'm Evan Kingsley, and I represent the Greening Committee and also PCS, Pleasantville Community Synagogue. Michael, you next? Michael Scheffler, I should say.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Evan. Hi, Michael Scheffler. As Bonnie said, I'm also a member of the Greening Committee for WJC. And Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob. I've been on this committee about 2 years. I belong to Congregation Sons of Israel in Briarcliff Manor. And I will call on Robin Rosenberg.
Thank you. So I'm Robin Rosenberg, Greenberg Hebrew Center on our green team. I just want to say we just did a really fun cleanup on Sunday by the Sawmill River. I'm on my phone, so I don't know who's next. I really can't tell. So someone just talk. Thank you.
Paul, do you want to go?
All right, Paul Katzenstein with Lurchmont Temple Green Team. And next we had Brian. I'm sorry, Evan is gone.
Yeah, maybe
Michael Stein, maybe.
How about Michael Stein? Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Michael Stein with Westchester Jewish Center in Mamaroneck.
Thank you, Michael. And I think Pam's the last one on the call, so you can introduce yourself and do the updates at the same time.
Great. Pam Goldstein from the Westchester Jewish Council. I want to thank Bonnie and Evan for doing such an incredible job leading this roundtable for the past 2 years. It's been an incredible year and 2 of programming. So thank you for that. And thank you all for making the time to be here today. And thank you to Nicole. We're looking forward to your presentation. I will give a very brief council update. We have a couple of programs happening next week. On Monday at 12 o'clock at the Garden of Remembrance, we have our Yom HaShoah countywide commemoration. As Bonnie mentioned, especially in light of everything going on, it's so important to remember and never forget what had happened in the Holocaust. We have a survivor coming to speak, so that should be very, very special. And then Tuesday night, we have our Julian Y. Bernstein Distinguished Service Awards, where we're honoring council member organizations, volunteers for nothing else but just doing good work in the community. So it's a really good, feel-good opportunity to come together as a community to honor these leaders for doing good work. So thank you all. And looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Pam. And Evan, back to you.
Yes. Nicole Laible is the district manager for the Westchester County Soil and Water Conservation District. She manages a board of directors, diverse environmental projects and programs, and she oversees an annual budget and grants, as well as performance standards. Prior to her service with Westchester County, she was the environmental programs manager for the Rockland County Division of Environmental Resources. And prior to her county government service, she served 2 terms with AmeriCorps. She's an Environmental Leadership Program Northeast Program Senior Fellow, and she has a master's in Public Administration and Policy from American University, as well as a Bachelor of Science from SUNY Stony Brook, where she double majored in Marine Sciences and Coastal Environmental Studies. Nicole, we're so grateful for your time today and really looking forward to what you have to share with us. Let you introduce yourself, and then I will put up Nicole's slides, and you'll just let me know, Nicole, as you want me to move from one to the next.
Well, thank you so much, Evan, and everyone here today. It's a beautiful day outside, so I appreciate you taking this call from wherever you are, inside or in the car. Yes, as Evan mentioned, my main title is Principal Environmental Planner at Westchester County Department of Planning. We have 7 sections within the County Planning Department, one of them being the environmental section. So it's myself and a handful of other employees that work on various conservation-based projects. My main role there at Westchester County Department of Planning is overseeing the Soil and Water Conservation District. And so I'll paint the picture, give some context into what a Soil and Water Conservation District is, as there are 58 in New York State, and they exist primarily throughout the entire nation, either on a regional level or a county level, and they offer different services to communities. So, Evan, if you wouldn't mind sharing the slide deck.
Okay. Has it come up or no? No?
I'm not
Okay.
seeing it.
Let me try again.
Okay.
Share. Good.
Yeah, that's good. If you wouldn't mind going up to the first.
There we go.
Slide. Perfect. Yep. Thank you so much. Okay, great. So this, I'll be able to share this with you all if that's okay, Evan, afterwards. There's some hyperlinks in here that might be helpful, and then I could send some other resources via email as a follow-up that I'll talk about in terms of how youth and adults can get engaged and help with water quality and flooding mitigation work. So you can go to the second slide. Thank you. Okay, so what is a Soil and Water Conservation District? Again, just some context setting here. Soil and Water Conservation Districts were formed back out west in response to the Dust Bowl. So a big focus on how to manage soil erosion issues when it comes to agricultural purposes out west. And then later, of course, water and soil tie in together. So later on, that was integrated in the 50s and 60s, in addition to the Clean Water Act, which happened a few years after that. So soil and water conservation districts are typically governed by locally a board of directors. That board of directors really varies based on the state. We have district law and other laws that really help advise us in terms of how we are comprised. And our main focus here is to create and carry out programs that focus around soil, water, and natural resources, providing technical assistance and support, as well as funding support to residents, landowners, and different various units of government. So as I mentioned earlier, New York State is home to 58 soil and water conservation districts, and across the entire nation, there are several soil and water conservation districts with different focus, specialties, as well as a different board of director makeup. You go to the next slide. Perfect. So I'll be talking about Westchester Soil and Water Conservation District in particular. So our district was formed back in 1967. We are governed by a 7-member board of directors. They are comprised of local residents representing various parts of Westchester County. We try and have a equally distribution of the different parts of Westchester. Westchester is a huge county, especially coming from Rockland, very different in size. So we have 7 folks representing our large county. We have 1 vacancy currently, so we're looking for filling that vacancy. And the district here is housed within the Westchester County Department of Planning. When it was first formed, it was a separate entity. I feel like it's easiest to compare us to extension offices. So Cornell Extension, we receive funding from New York State Agriculture and Markets. And then we also receive some county appropriations. And then a few decades after 1967, we were decided to move into the County Department of Planning offices to help with some shared services agreements. So right now, we are a staff of one, that's me, and then we work a lot with the other folks in the environmental section staff. And we have an annual budget and work plan. So as I mentioned earlier, our annual budget comes in the form of state aid through New York State Agriculture and Markets. We've been very gracious in terms of how much funding we've been receiving year after year, and we are able to use a lot of that funding to support our programs, staff, purchase of equipment, etc. And then we develop a work plan every year as well that's due in November that has to be approved by our board of directors, and that shapes our annual budget. And that also goes up to the New York State Agriculture and Markets for review and approval to make sure we're in alignment with our soil district mission and our district law that really oversees all of the 58 districts. And thank you so much. So I'm just going to kind of lump how our work plans have been developed over the past couple of years. And I should have prefaced this. I've been with Westchester County Planning for about a year and a half. So I'm going to be open to all the questions, but I'm still learning as well. So if there's anything I can't answer, I'll definitely can follow up and provide resources. So our initiatives, they're lumped in 3 categories right now. So we have habitat restoration on the left in our green box. This is pretty a wide variety of focus, but we do a lot of invasive species management work. So we're actually funding 2 invasive species management plans for projects that we've worked on in the past. This includes Croton grasslands. So the grasslands project helped with a bird revitalization habitat on top of a county landfill, a capped landfill at Croton Point Park. If folks are familiar with that area. We reestablished 100-acre grassland over the past couple of years, and now we have invasive species moving onto that land. So we're working with experts to create a management plan and strategy to help mitigate those issues, to not only provide support and habitat for migratory birds that use the Atlantic Flyway through the Hudson River, but also make sure that we're having the right type of grassland habitat for our plants that grow there. And then we have beech leaf disease. So that's been an issue going on throughout the county and throughout our park system. So we've been replanting a lot of trees, so purchasing new trees to help with the die-off. And that's been happening mainly at Saxon Woods County Park, but also throughout different county parks as well. We have a historic aquatic restoration program, which basically is green infrastructure or projects that have been installed across the county for the past 20 years. We have 36, I believe, map sites, but there's more than that. And they help with water quality improvement as well as flood mitigation. So these were purposefully installed at sites that were very easily accessible to the public to help promote the ability for them to be replicated either on a home property or at a municipal property, such as a library, etc. And then we just helped with the New York State Open Space Plan update. So of course, water and land tie in together in terms of access and making sure land use is not impacting water quality poorly. So we just help with the New York State update with a lens on equity and access to urban areas and urban communities being able to access open green space. And then Westchester County is going to be updating their own open space plan and a comprehensive plan, which will look at this as well. Lastly, the living shoreline at Edith Reed. So there's 2 images here. In the upper left corner is our design concept plan. And in the bottom left corner is kind of a schema showing natural-based features to hardened-based features. So green to gray, we like to call it. And we kind of like to be in the middle. So sage is what folks say. Thank you for zooming in. Yeah, so that bottom left-hand corner. So we are... Construction actually just began at Edith Reed and Rye to help with floodplain mitigation, storm resiliency, and this will be the first natural, soft, or living shoreline, people like to use all different terms, in Westchester County on the Long Island Sound. So Long Island has a few of these, including Patchogue, the village of Patchogue. So we're trying to work across the entire Long Island Sound to see how we can compare how well these are working over time. Then in the blue middle column, we have environmental education and outreach. So that's where my passion lies. I also love watershed management, but we're really trying to bring more environmental education programming for both youth and adults across Westchester County. And we're doing that through a series of programs, including a chronologue station. So chronologue is a really cool interactive time-lapse feature where you basically can just use your cell phone, scan a QR code, take a picture of a site, and then we encourage the public, they're typically at public parks, to take pictures over time, and then that is connected to a website. So you will have a time lapse from multiple years to see how the project has progressed, or maybe invasive species has occurred. There are ones for prescribed burns, so it's really interesting to see how that takes place. But we're going to be having these at Edith Reed to show the change over time of the living shoreline. And then we're having them at other project sites as well in terms of Cranberry Lakes. They're doing a restoration project there too. And then we have Envirothon. That's a high school oriented program geared for grades 9 through 12. We just actually had one April 19th, a regional level Envirothon with over 200 students representing 15 schools from Westchester, Putnam County, and Ulster County. We had participation from Dutchess and Rockland as well, but trying to encourage those schools to come for next year. So that allows students to form teams of 5 to 7 individuals, and then they compete in a series of 6 eco-station tests. So they study on their own time or as part of their environmental science or biology class. And then they come out to the park for the entire day, get to meet other students from different areas, take these fun eco-station kind of experimental tests. They get lunch, a swag item. We gave out blankets this year because it was pretty cold, April 19th. And then the winner from each county goes on to the New York State Envirothon, and the winner of New York State goes on to the National Envirothon. So the National Envirothon is in New York as well this year. We do an Enviroscape loan program. So that helps teach about stormwater management and water quality decision-making and land use. So for organizations that can't afford to purchase their own, they're about $2,000 to $3,000 per piece. We loan them out. A day in the life of the Hudson and Harbor. If you're in a community that's in the Hudson River area, we work with the New York State DEC and Columbia University to provide services and as an environmental organization to high schools and actually elementary through high school to help collect data, a snapshot of the health of the river on one day in October. And that happens from New York City all the way up to Troy. We offer educational workshops for adults as well and homeowners. So in the bottom right, you'll see a pond and lake management workshop flyer. We just had that in March. It was 250 registrants for that, and basically teaching folks how to prevent harmful algal blooms from taking place, how to manage versus maintain their pond or lake. We offer 4-hour erosion and sediment control trainings. Those are required for anyone with an active construction site. They're valid for 3 years. And then we work regionally as well. So across the entire Lower Hudson region, there's a group of conservation districts from New York City all the way up through Rensselaer County that we collaborate on and do projects together. Thank you. And then we have watershed management and resiliency plans. So here today, I'm going to focus a lot of my discussion on the 2 9-element watershed management plans that we recently completed or in the process of completing. They are for the Stevenson Brook and the Hutchinson River, so both within the Long Island Sound larger drainage basin or watershed. Then we're also doing smaller projects in terms of a vernal pool water quality study at county parks. So Cranberry Lake has several seasonal vernal pools that occur after snowmelt in the spring. And we want to see how any algal blooms might be happening there and how to prevent that. So we have this really nice study, kind of a pilot study going on. If it's successful, we'll market it for other people. And of course, hazard mitigation plans. So county planning is one of several other organizations involved with the Office of Emergency Management for hazard mitigation plans, storm resiliency, natural disasters, etc. There is a tool called the BA tool that the Soil District funds. And that helps consolidate all of the plans from the county level to local municipalities onto one interactive tool. So it helps kind of organize everything. We have a focus too on the new MS4 program update. So looking at stormwater management through public education and outreach. We're finalizing that. And once that's done, I could share that as well, because that's a nice community science project that all different ages could be involved with. Local watershed groups that we're involved with is the Mechanical River Watershed Alliance, Hudson River Watershed Alliance, and then there's a flood resiliency network and a coastal resiliency network. So that looks at the Hudson River and the Long Island Sound. Westchester is blessed with both of those major waterways. So just trying to figure out how to work collaboratively with those organizations and municipalities that share those waterways to ensure that they're going to be protected for the future. Okay, you go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So now we'll focus on water quality and waterways in Westchester County. Thank you. I'll provide a better map as a follow-up. This one's tough to see, but this is just a screenshot of our major drainage basins in Westchester County. And before I go too deep into that, I wanted to define some of the terms I'll be using. So what is a watershed? For the context of this, we're going to be looking at a lot of watersheds. Watershed is an area of land defined by high peaks or mountains where water flows into. So of course, water flows from an area of high elevation to low elevation. In Westchester County, we're a large county. We have several different areas where water can flow into, and typically that flows into a larger river. And so here in Westchester County, you can see how they're all delineated by different colors. So the major drainage basins or larger watersheds are the Peekskill and Haverstraw Bay Basin, the Croton River Basin, the inland Long Island Sound, Pecanico and Sawmill, and then we have the Bronx River and the coastal Long Island Sound. So the majority of the ones we'll be focusing on today are really the Long Island Sound watershed. You can go on to the next slide. Thank you. And so historically, the county planning department had something known as a citizen monitoring program, CVMP, and that program helped create a baseline data set of how impaired or healthy our waterways are in Westchester County. That, I believe, is over 20 years old at this point. So in addition to that program, there were also these groups or committees known as Watershed Advisory Councils, or WACs, with different numbers enumerating all of those larger drainage basins. And what I'm going to be talking about now is how we're taking that old data and using it to kind of see how land use has changed and what locals can do today to help improve water quality. So on this slide, if you want to zoom out a little bit, Evan, thank you so much. Perfect. Okay. So on the left side, we have an image of the Hutchinson River watershed. So that's going to be one of the focuses today. And then we have another watershed, that's the Stevenson Brook, which I'll go into next. So do you mind going to the first one slide up? I'm sorry, skipped something. Perfect. Okay, great. So what we're going to be focusing on are 9-element plans. They're very popular right now. They have a federal framework through the EPA and a state DEC framework. There are tons of other plans that folks can be using in terms of watershed characterization plans, which basically create a library of resources altogether. Educational plans, which help look at access and signage. And then there's plans that are more technical that look at how to actually reduce pollutant load and stuff like that. So the 9-element plan is a more technical document, which does also include some education and outreach and helps categorize all of our historic data into one area. So it's a very thick document that also has a list of things that we can do in terms of tangible outcomes. So the 9 elements stands for 9 different key focus areas that we'll focus on. And those include identifying pollution sources, identifying water quality targets and areas to reduce those pollutants, having best management practices or BMPs, financial and technical assistance identified to ensure that those BMPs can be installed or actually take place, make sure that the local community and regional community are involved. As I mentioned earlier, watersheds don't know municipal boundaries, so we need to make sure we're looking outside of our small area and looking greater to work together to make sure upstream decisions don't have downstream impacts and vice versa. So that's what we called stakeholder outreach. Then we have a formal schedule to make sure we stay on point and have tangible outcomes that we can meet. We have an implementation strategy and a budget to see how much these things cost and how we can actually get funding to support those costs. We have milestones that we like to outline, and then performance criteria to make sure that the water quality improvements are being met. And then lastly, we have a monitoring plan to make sure that our entire 8 steps before that are hit. So it's quite a lengthy process. Now you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Can you just go back up one to Hutchinson River? Perfect. Okay. So there, as I mentioned, there's many different types of plans. And for the Hutchinson River, we worked with the NGO called Save the Sound. They were the lead on this project. And as you'll see, a lot of their logo and a lot of these slide decks, they were amazing. They had really great watershed planners and organizers as part of that team. And then we also had a consulting firm known as Biohabitats that helped create our plan and do all of that kind of more technical research for us. So we wanted to identify existing water quality issues, characterize all existing projects into one plan, and consolidate everything, offer ways for the municipalities and local community members, as well as private industry, to provide feedback and share what they've experienced living in that watershed and how we can improve their experiences, and then develop a unified goal and prioritization schema, we'll call it, to make sure everybody's needs were addressed and that the overall watershed protection was being met through these restoration goals. And our end goal, of course, was improving water quality. Okay, so for the Hutchinson River, thank you, sorry. For the Hutchinson River, you can see that it spans around 13,000 acres from Westchester County into the Bronx. So we're going into 2 different counties here. And for the sake of this plan, we're focused strictly on Westchester County as phase 1. Phase 2 will be the Bronx, and we'll be working on that plan shortly. So there's 6 municipalities that share the watershed, and that's Scarsdale, Eastchester, New Rochelle, Pelham, and Mount Vernon, and of course, the Bronx. So this river is on the New York State DEC 303D list as an impaired waterway, and that is due to several parameters, including fecal coliform, so bacteria, oxygen demand, so low dissolved oxygen or low ability for oxygen in the water column to be absorbed by organisms, oil and grease, so that could be from auto body shops to a lot of industry, gas stations, etc. Garbage, that could be from anything from stormwater runoff, so folks putting dog poop bags in storm drains instead of a garbage receptacle, to a lot of floatables, or that could equate to plastic bottles, etc., washing out into our storm drains. Okay, so as I mentioned, phase 1, Save the Sound, Westchester County, and Biohabitats wanted to complete a survey of on-the-ground conditions where data gaps were met. So Biohabitat scientists, as well as scientists from Save the Sound, went out into that whole watershed from Westchester County, so Scarsdale through Pelham, Mount Vernon, and looked at each of the communities to see where hotspots or areas where a lot of pollution might be a source of, and then look at the existing data we have there too. And of course, we wanted to integrate the comments from the community. So that's what that second image is here. There were a series of public stakeholder meetings that you could see actually on Save the Sound's website. They had a really transparent website of the whole process. And these are the main community needs. So it focused around a lot on river access, educational opportunities, and more programming. So that helped us prioritize how we wanted to rank our findings. We had our findings, but of course, if this was of more importance and more likely to be implemented, we wanted to rank that higher than some other things here. So the image on the right is going to talk about our results, what we found. So this was over the course of, I believe, almost 2 years for this project plan. And this image shows the entire watershed again, but then you'll see lots of different colored dots. So you have red, yellow, and green. Each of those will talk about different opportunities for best management practices or ways to improve water quality. So they start from reforestation, so tree plantings to help with flooding and erosion control, and also create more habitat and help filter water before going into the stream. We have retrofits, so that looks at green infrastructure. That could be anything from a rain garden or a lot of parking lots that exist in the Hutchinson River, so those large parking lot areas. They could be replaced with porous pavement, which helps filter water down instead of creating these sheathing effects on hardening surfaces. And then lastly, we have hotspots. So those are areas where there's a lot of oil and grease potential or a lot of garbage that gets into the river. So what can we do to prevent that from getting into the river, or how do we install projects that help filter the water before getting directly into the river? Okay, so I'll see here. Yep, thank you. You can see that quite a few of these are spanned throughout the entire watershed. We wanted to make sure we got clusters. So everyone had an equal kind of part within the watershed plan itself. It wasn't all in just one area downstream. We want to reinforce that upstream development and upstream impacts do have a major influence downstream. So you'll see upstream, we encouraged a lot more reforestation and retrofit projects. And then downstream, closer to Sprague Terminal, you'll see that there's a lot more hotspots down there. That's a more commercial industrial area. So we were looking at more of how do we get rid of oil and grease impacts, as well as how do we get rid of that garbage that's floating downstream. Okay, you go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay. And then in summary, so the trash monitoring is something that we really wanted to focus on for the Hutch, and I'll talk about Stevenson Brook real quick. But we want to look at stewardship efforts. So I'll circle back on stewardship efforts later on in the slides too, but there are a lot of ways where the community at large and locals can work together and make these small changes that have big impacts. So I'll talk about some of those in Stevenson Brook here. Okay, so Stevenson Brook, there's a map in the middle. You can see the different municipalities outlined. That's around a 7,000 acre watershed, and that flows through Larchmont, New Rochelle, Mamaroneck, and Pelham Manor. And most of these communities share similar land use characteristics. So a lot of residential land use and a lot of development that's kind of sprawled out. So the three main things that we found from Stevenson Brook included that there were a lot of great green features that we saw on residential lots, but there was still a lot of garbage and nutrients found in the waterways, which they could be attributing to storm drain runoff. And so there was a push for storm drain stenciling and educational opportunities. So if you go to the right, there's two examples of storm drain stencils. And these are great community science youth. We used to do this a lot in Rockland County, installing storm drain marker. So first is an image of a plastic storm drain marker that gets glued onto the storm drain grate, which is that kind of rust colored image in the back. And then there's also storm drain stencils, which you could spray on with paint that's activated in the rain to show how rain runoff really does flow into the storm drain, or you could use various types of eco-friendly paint to kind of draw it on. And we did this with a lot of different age groups, from high school students, college students, to scout groups that needed credits, etc. So this was a really nice way to get folks outside. It takes pretty minimal effort, and municipalities are looking at this as well. A lot of them already do it through their highway department, but of course highways are strapped. So having volunteers do this is really wonderful way to offset capacity issues. And it helps the municipality meet their MS4 or New York State minimum control measure, number 1 and 2. So that's really a nice sell for the municipalities to say, yes, we would love help. Please install these on your local road. You know, don't do it on a busy road, but on your residential road, you could install those, and they help remind people not to put their dog waste bag or grass clippings in the storm drain, but really just put water in there. You'll also notice that there was a need for street sweeping. So you can't really see this here, but in terms of land use, street sweeping does help clear the roadway and reduce blockages into the storm drain grates. Pet waste education efforts as related to dog waste receptacle stations was another way to encourage folks not to dump waste into our roadways, and that has to do with high nutrient loads. So reducing those nutrient loads, making sure parks and municipal spaces, shared spaces, have dog waste receptacles so that folks don't tend to leave them into storm drain grates, because a lot of folks think that those are a garbage receptacle, but they're not. And then, of course, there's a lot of marinas and golf courses in this watershed. So encouraging the marinas to have green marina standards. And then, of course, let me see here. The golf courses to utilize, there's 2 different types of certifications through Audubon, and then Cornell University also has some standards that can be met to help reduce runoff and use of water in those areas. And lastly, the improvement of storage and management of fertilizers at local nurseries. So that's more communicating with the nurseries to make sure that they're keeping them, tucked away from the waterway so that if a heavy rain comes, it doesn't just wash into the river, and making sure that they're properly stored so that excess nutrients doesn't get into the river. You go to the next slide. Perfect. Okay. So just summarizing our major findings, each watershed has different needs based on the communities and the way in which it was utilizing the land. So our land use is very important here. And then, of course, how we meet the needs of the community members. Every community is going to have different needs. We really want to make sure that we re-engage stakeholders and pivot as we go and meet the needs of the stakeholders while also addressing our key concern, which is water quality. Watersheds don't know municipal boundaries. So again, we can't just look at it as a one municipal village or town issue. Have to look at it as on a wider scale and get more collaboration involved. Include stakeholders in the decision-making process early and often. So this again addresses community needs. And we were able to do this with the Hutchinson River watershed very well through a prioritization schema and a steering committee. So the steering committee provided comment throughout the 2-year period of this plan. And then they were able to show their influence when we were able to weigh how much our data was scored, basically, and how to rank the projects that we wanted to implement based on the needs and the likelihood that it would actually happen. So getting that buy-in was really important. Access and environmental education programs to help build stewardship and continue that engagement with stewards. So making sure the community has access to this river, because a lot of them didn't know what their relationship might be to it. So making sure there's a relationship opportunity there. And of course, having programming for youth and adults to be able to engage with the river in a way that was safe and healthy and long lasting for years to come. And then we had a project priority plan. So this ties in with the prioritization schema. We had a way for folks to have influence in terms of our end result. So those plans and projects that we wanted to actually implement, we called it a PPP, a priority project plan. So it basically, listed everything that we wanted to see happen. And then stewardship. So it all ties back to what folks can do either at the municipal level, the industry commercial level, the homeowner level, and the community member level. What can happen? So if you go to the next slide, we could talk how everyone can help. So this is what I'm most excited about. Get to know your local waterways. So here's a link. It might not open, but as a follow-up, if folks want to play with this mapper, it's a really great mapper. You type in where you live, and then it'll come up on the screen. And they'll show all the different watersheds, and you could zoom into smaller sub-watersheds. So you could see you're part of either the Hudson River or Long Island Sound watershed, for example. And then as you zoom in closer, you could see, oh, I'm actually in the Hutchinson River watershed. I could look at this plan if I want to, or talk to these stakeholders that I know were invested in this already and see how I can get involved. You want to report issues you see. So if you see a waterway that might be discolored, it could have an oily sheen, it could have an odor, it could have a cloudy look to it. There's all these different tools and resources to contact. So one thing that Westchester County Planning that we're looking to launch soon is called the Water Watch tool. It's looking explicitly at illicit discharge and flooding. So illicit discharge is really tied to MS4 management, so more the DEC kind of regulatory end of things, but it does look at water quality. So it's going to say, do you see any oily sheen in the water? Do you see a lot of leaf litter, grass clippings? Do you see sediment buildup? Do you see a ton of garbage on your road that's going into a storm drain? You could take a picture of it and then submit it on an online survey using ArcGIS on your phone. And then that goes to county planning staff, and that would be relayed to the local municipality. And then we have the New York State DEC has a spill response team. So that's really for oil spills and petroleum spills. So if there's an odor or an oily sheen to a waterway, that immediately wants to be reported. Because again, it could happen upstream and it might already have been flowing downstream, or it could be prevented before reaching a downstream location. So there's a special hotline to call for that. And then local Department of Healths have, most of them at the village, town, county level, have staff that might be able to go out and investigate a reported illicit discharge before it goes to the DEC, or if that local municipality doesn't have that resource, DEC will come down. So if you ever have your cell phone handy and you're unsure, you could always take a picture and then it could go to those entities. Community science, that's something that I've really been involved with for the past 10 years. It's something that I think is very impactful. So community science is also known as participatory science. So it really encourages folks that don't have a technical science background to get involved with different science projects. At Westchester County Planning, we ourselves don't host any, but we did in the past. That was at Citizen Volunteer Monitoring Program, CVMP. Now that's passed on to a lot of local nonprofit organizations. So Save the Sound is one that we were able to partner with for the Hutchinson River Plan, and they have a really great enterococcus stream monitoring program. So if bacteria is people's thing and they really want to get experience in that, especially for folks in high school and middle school that might want to go into the conservation biology field, we always encourage folks to get these volunteer hours under their belt and really just have that experiential learning if they have the opportunity to go to these sites where they're having it and meet like-minded people. So Save the Sound is one. New York State DEC has a program known as WAVE, that's Watershed Assessments by Volunteer Evaluators. So that is, it takes place all across New York State, and you could actually get a certification at different levels. So it's also really interesting for folks that want to move into this as a career field, or as an internship program in the future, or of just general interest and they want to monitor a lake or stream in their backyard. They can see if it's impaired or healthy. And then if it's potentially impaired, the DEC will flag it and come down when they do their 5-year rotation of sampling. So there's potential for DEC biologists to come down and investigate if it's needed. The Urban Center at Bezac in Yonkers has great initiatives as well, T-Town, and then Riverkeeper Sweep for cleanups. And they also do some monitoring programs as well there. So there's a bunch of other organizations. Those are just some that were top of mind. Another way that folks can get involved is joining a watershed group or an action council. So the Pecanico Creek Watershed Alliance just reinvigorated. That's more the Hudson River side of things. But they're a very active group out of Pace University, and they're looking to do a lot of research, have a lot of youth engaged, and residents and activists, et cetera, kind of bring light to what's going on in the Pecanico watershed and how folks can work together. And then there's also the Hutchinson River Restoration Project, who we worked with for the Hutchinson River Plan. They're a group that folks can get involved with, and a lot of these groups want youth voice to show sustainability of these fellowship stewardship experiences. And also those are the folks that are going to be here for next generations. We want to make sure that their voices are heard. Attend a CAC, so a Conservation Action Committee meeting. At most local levels, the village or town has a CAC, and they are open to the public legally through open meeting law. And so if folks are interested, they want to sit in, learn, stuff should be available online. If not, you could contact your local municipality and find out more, and you could attend virtually or in person for most of those. At the county level, we have the Climate Smart Task Force, and that is through the Clean Energy Communities and Climate Smart Communities Initiative at the county level, and they look for youth voice as well. And there's several subcommittees. One is water. And I'm going to repitch Envirothon. If folks are interested in that on more of a youth level, joining an Envirothon team or starting your own Envirothon team allows you to connect with schools that do have really great research academic opportunities. And a lot of our volunteers that help with Envirothon are professors at local universities. And then there's also folks that are like-minded in the environmental field, as including other educators, et cetera. Lastly, We do have an internship program at Westchester County Planning that we're looking to pitch. Well, actually, we are pitching it. It's the first year, we're rebranding it. There are 5 paid positions at up to $18 an hour for a 10-week term. And we're looking mainly for folks that are currently enrolled in college or recently graduated, so graduating this May. We have 2 positions available at the environmental section. And then we also have availability in the land use section, housing and community development, and our design section. So working with landscape architects. So really trying to provide those opportunities for folks to get real world experience, especially in the government sector. And yeah, working with a lot of communities and municipalities. You go to the next slide. Okay, this is just a snapshot of Envirothon, pitching it because we're the co-managers of it. So if you work with a lot of high school youth or know any high school youth who are interested, Envirothon's been going on since 1979 in Pennsylvania. It's a natural resource. That's okay. It's a natural resource competition. It's the leading natural resource competition in the United States and actually Canada. And so this takes place throughout the year, primarily in the spring. We at Westchester County host the regional event, so it spans 5 counties for the lower Hudson Valley, and it's typically hosted in Westchester. Historically, it's going to be hosted with Croton Point Park. We were at Mountain Lakes for a couple of years, but now we're sticking to Croton Point Park. So if any high school students are interested in forming a team or have a great environmental science teacher, biology teacher, this is something that could be of interest to them. And feel free to talk to me or our colleagues at Parks, Recreation, and Conservation. We really love this program. It prevents students and schools from having to drive up to Albany to participate in a regional event. So we have a lot of participation from schools in Yonkers, all the way up from schools in Ulster County. So it's an interesting divide and a really great way for different schools to mix and meet each other. The next slide. Okay, great. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
And speak for a while, but now, yeah, I'd love to open the floor to any questions. I think I saw some come in the chat.
Yeah,
So
I think we're a small enough group. Bob, do you want to just ask your questions? Bob?
Sure. So I'm thinking about ways that we actually get the members of our members
Okay.
to do stuff.
Okay.
So the first question is, when you showed the different districts where you're paying attention to water and soil, you showed what parks and coastlines they're near, but you didn't say if any of them are near a JCC building, a temple building, a synagogue building. Is that something you can pull out of your ArcGIS system really quick?
So if I had my GIS expert, I could. I'm not personally a GIS expert, but that is something really important to, yes, pull up. We do have it, I believe, in our GIS system. So when I send a follow-up email, I can have that as a map that's provided to you all. Yep. And I'll have steps too if you want to visit it on your own time, how to get that layer.
My second question is that there's a Jewish holiday called Tu B'Shvat. They often call it the birthday of the trees, but a lot of environmental stuff happens. It seems to be sort of towards late winter. And the question is, we've already done all kind of the obvious things, like let's raise money and plant trees and whatever. And so my question is, might you or someone you know, or perhaps one of the interns that you hired this year, next year, help us program something?
No.
Like maybe our religious school students who are generally between the ages of 7 and 16, I'll say, might relate to hearing from a 19-year-old more than they would from me. So that's, and then the last question is, when you were calling out miscellaneous things like where people paint signs on top of water grates, if you had a web page with all such volunteer activities, and instructions, and who to email if the instructions aren't clear, or if you need permission because you're doing something on municipal property. A lot of synagogues, including mine, ask that some kind of community service or social service project be done by 12-year-olds.
Okay.
And it would be great to be able to look at that category, but it would require you checking them off. If this year's version says we have 50 grates that still need to be painted with a message, if somebody says we did it, before, then you have to update it. Otherwise, some kid is going to go there with his parents and it's already done. Anyway, those are my questions.
Yes, well, those are great questions. So let me see if I wrote them down correctly. So for the program development, our interns this summer part of their work plan is to develop educational lesson plans. So we could definitely see about that. We work very closely with Parks, Recreation, and Conservation and their conservation staff. So they're the educators, naturalists at a lot of nature centers. So they might already have programming that's in alignment. So I'll reach out to their conservation director and see for you on that one. 7 to 16 years old is a great age range. So I think that's definitely something if there isn't content, we could definitely look at developing content for that age range. And then the webpage, yes, fully agree with you on that. So of course, government websites aren't the most easy to navigate. We all know this, right? So Westchester County's Planning Department website is looking to update a lot of the environmental resources to something known as a story map or GeoHub experience builder. So it'll look visually a lot prettier, I guess I could say, less analog, and it'll tell more stories there. So that's something I'll make note of for the future. Like the Water Watch tool that we're looking to deploy soon, that will have a lot of step-by-step information for folks. But additional information, like you were saying with the storm drain grate installation, we'll put that we'll think about that and see how we can make that into a checklist. Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're actually at the end of our hour, and I know folks have other things to move on to at 1 o'clock. We will make this recording available, and actually we have a nice track record we've learned from Pam of people listening to those recordings. So Pam, if you'll send out that link, as well as Nicole's deck, which will be posted on our Greening site. I'd like to thank Nicole so much for your time today, for something that was really quite fascinating. I think we should also be cognizant of finding opportunities for synagogue groups to do single day cleanups that could be really popular and easy way for synagogue to do something positive that makes a difference. So we should talk about how to make that available to our audience. I want to also thank everybody who's participated in these calls. I'm cycling off of the Westchester Jewish Council board. It's been my pleasure working on these the last couple of years, but I know that there are talented people who will take my place and continue this kind of educational work over the next coming years, particularly with Bonnie, who's just been an incredible partner.
Thank you.
Bonnie?
I miss you. Well, I think that's it for today. This is our last meeting of the year. The next meeting will start in the fall around the holidays, the Jewish holidays. So just because we're not having the meetings doesn't mean we shouldn't communicate. So if anybody has any ideas about programming for next year, please, send out some emails. And if you have good news to share about your congregation, some great environmental program you did this year, please send that out in an email to us as well. And we'll talk about it at the next meeting and maybe ask you to be a speaker. So thank you again, everybody, and have a nice summer.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Bye.